Yeah. All right. So I first saw this movie at the Boston Underground Film Festival, and it blew my mind. I love the way that Bomani Story here integrated social issues, personal issues with a true reading of Frankenstein, which I hadn't seen that much before this year. A real kind of understanding of how truly progressive and mind breaking Frankenstein is as a piece. And so I was, of course, curious as to who this man was. I asked to speak with him. Luckily, he accepted that invitation. We've sort of kept in touch since. And so it was my great pleasure to present to you the director of The Angry Black Girl and Her Monster, Bomani Story. Tonight is Pepe and Leo, and they will be leading the discussion tonight with our film club. We're all so excited that you're here, Bomani. Thank you so much.
No problem, man. It's my pleasure. Thank y'all for having me.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you again and congratulations on this film. It's a wonderful film. It was such a great experience, and yeah, man, I'm blown away by it. So thank you for making that. I wanted to start off this discussion talking about your experience leading up to the making of this film. In a past interview, you talked about how Crypt TV was the one that picked this up after your manager was sort of showing your script to various production companies, and you ended up with Crypt TV, which is mostly focused on digital media, so like smaller pieces and things like that. So I was kind of interested in how it was, or what your experience was working with Crypt TV as a production house, and yeah, what your experience was working with a sort of a smaller production company and using that avenue to put your film out there, make it happen and put it out there.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you're just looking for people to, especially for me, since it was my directorial debut, you're looking for people who are, I mean, like, but we're looking to take a risk, you know what I mean? Because you're not vetted, you're not minted yet. And one of the things that Crypt TV was willing to do was to, you know, take a shot on me. And they were pretty enthusiastic about the script, which was fantastic. It was also their first feature for their company, because they had been, like you said, doing short digital media. They had done a TV show, but they were also doing, you know, it's like, so this was their first venture into a feature like film nationally for the US. I think they did something, a foreign film, but I was their first, like, you know, national film, I believe. And so just to have someone there with you in the trenches like that, where you're all kind of experimenting and figuring it out, you know, like that was great. So it was yeah, it was a wild experience.
Yeah, cool. Hopping off of that, what was the budget for The Angry Black Girl and Her Monster, and how did the budget influence the way you approached the sci-fi horror moments in the film?
Our budget wasn't too big. I don't know what the final number we landed at. They don't like me talking about that for some reason. I don't know why, it's weird, but like I can't. We're like, for those who want to do the research, we were tier 1. So you can look up what tier 1 means. And basically the way it affected it was kind of like, I mean, you obviously have less toys, right? Like, you know, but like, honestly, the types of movies that I was watching in preparation for this were all like first time independent features. You know, I was looking at Nolan's Following, and I was looking at Aronofsky's Pi, and I was looking at, you know, PTA's Hard Aid, and things like that, you know, in order to kind of get a sense of what, you know, the look might be and how to, you know, stretch the most out of what you got, you know, to try to, you know, try to show and tell a great story, even though your resources are limited. So to me, it was a matter of, you know, exercising that, because just because you don't have all the resources doesn't mean you can't tell a good story, which is, you know, which I hope I did for all of you. So like that was really what I was kind of looking at it. I try not to look at it as restrictions and look at it more of just like, all right, so because you're never going to have enough time and you're never going to have enough money. Doesn't matter who you are or what level you are in the game, you're always going to want more. So then there's always going to be a limitation. So instead, I always try to look at it as a thing of like, all right, so what do I have and how do I exercise that to maximize the capabilities? You know, I often think about the cliche story, but it's, you know, it's the one that works. But I often think about the story of Jaws and how, you know, the legend is that the shark broke, you know, and not showing the shark costs, I don't want to say cost $0, but it definitely costs less time and money than showing it. And it was a very effective movie for that. And it's not to say that every time you do a monster movie or anything that you don't show the monster. I mean, the movie Terrifier shows the villain, you know, pretty outright. You know what I mean? So like, you're not hiding it at all. So there's different methods, you know, to get to where you need to go. But for me, one of those methods was, you know, Jaws was an effective tool. So it was something that I was also thinking about.
Yeah, I have to say, you know, I see what you mean by like not really showing the details of the monster too much. There is one shot towards the end of the film when Vicaria stabs the monster in the hand, and you see his face through the door for just like a split second. And I think it's one of the few times that you see the monster's face clearly, and it is so impactful because of all the everything you didn't show throughout the film. That one moment is so impactful. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Moving over to sort of talking about the story of Angry Black Girl and Her Monster. When you're writing narratives around minority and impoverished communities, how do you balance keeping with the genre's tropes of horror and sort of sci-fi and these fantastical ideas, but how do you keep them grounded when you're sort of talking about difficult topics like drug addiction and gang violence and things like that? Like, how was that experience of you trying to find like a sort of respectful way of presenting this while still keeping with the genre?
That's a good question. For me, it was a matter of always searching for the humanity in the scenario, you know, and always trying to stay true to that. You know, I think even in the original novel of Frankenstein, it's not a very big story, and it's actually very intimate. And so, you know, I learned from her, and that was something that I wanted uh, to use in this story and maintain, was to understand that this is a very like intimate story. And so for me, it was a matter of just like finding the humanity, you know, just because someone is addicted to drugs or has some kind of addiction like that doesn't mean that they can't function in society or that they should be discarded. These are still, you know, fathers or brothers or sisters, or, you know, it's like our parents, and they're still human. And even someone that might be accelerated with their genius is still, you know, a human. You know, it's like, so to me, it was a matter of always trying to find the humanity in the scenario. That was what I was always searching for when I was dealing with these, you know, these characters and the way that they're moving in the story.
Thank you. We actually have a question from the audience. We have Lyndon over here. I'm gonna ask a question for you.
Okay.
Sweet. Hey, how are you doing? I love your movie. It was great.
Thank you.
The main takeaway that I really like, the main thing that really struck me, just was the first time watching it, was just how like intricate in detail all of your sets and your locations were. And I just wanted to kind of know what your like process and sort of what your timeline was like for creating such those all those sets, especially like the lab. That's the one that really was going through my brain.
Yeah. No, man. Shout out to my my production designer, Mark Bankins. He was the one that really, you know, put those together. I mean, we didn't have a lot of time, but we did get a couple conversations in, you know, in order to try to to nail down what we wanted the lab to look like. And yeah, I mean, like weird thing about the sets is that outside of the lab and I guess the school, they're all like everything was pretty much a set that he built outside of the, you know, exteriors. And one of the clever things he did in order to save time and money was that like all the like family interiors, whether it was Kango's house, Vicaria's house, or Aisha's house, they were all the same place. We didn't build three different places. We just painted the walls different. And then I shot them from different angles to try to throw off, making sure it doesn't feel like you're in the same room, you know? So like there was just like little clever things like that, and also finding ways to find the thematic relevance of the colors, you know, of what they mean for each space. These were big things and discussions that we had. And like for the lab, I remember telling Mark that I was just like, this shouldn't look like, you know, she has the resources, right? This should look like she put it together from some kind of like she found everything, right? You know, like that was what I told him. And then he just took that and went, I mean, and went ham, right? So I hope that answers your question about like the
That's great, man. That part
yeah.
about the sets, the houses, I totally didn't realize that when I watched it, that they're all the same place.
Yeah,
But the
Yeah.
colors did, yeah, that resonated with me. That was great.
Thank you.
thanks.
I'm gonna jump over to your school life.
Yeah.
How did the community and relationships that you built during college transition into your professional life?
What's going? Well, it was like it was more than I'll say like because college was like very foundational for me and like in learning. Because one of the things that film school did for me was it put me in a space where I was surrounded by people who loved movies. And it was almost like we were constantly exchanging movies for each other to watch, watching them with each other, passing DVDs or whatever files, not files, DVDs. I didn't steal any movies ever. I never stole a movie in my life. So like passing those around between each other, and you know, just getting tired and talking about them, talking about these different films and filmmakers and what they did. And so like that very much affected how I made this movie, just because of all the cinema that I love and the references that I was pulling when I was thinking about this movie. As far as like work relationships and stuff like that, I can say I can reach back a little bit further and outside of college because um like I do have relationships. Like when I was in college, when I first got out, one of my friends started directing music videos, so that was the way I was making money. He was kind of just putting me on doing music videos and stuff like that. But someone else got my movie career started because when I first graduated high school, I started like interning at like a local TV station in my hometown. And there was a kid who was about 3 or 4 years younger than me who was editing and knew way more editing stuff than I did. His name was Trevor Stevens. And so we just started working together and just like doing short films together and stuff like that. But then I went off to SC and he stayed in the hometown, and then he went to Chapman. But he had me, but we stayed in touch. And then he eventually reached out and had me write a short film for him that ended up becoming a Vimeo staff pick back in the day. And then he got a feature deal and he came to me to write that feature. And that feature ended up being one called Rock Steady Row that he directed. And that one ended up going to Slam Dance and winning the Audience and Jury Award in 2018, which got my foot in the door, you know, got me a manager and a lawyer. And that's when I started writing The Angry Black Runner Monsters. So it's like, I can't say that like, you know, there was like a random college connect that did something or whatever, you know, it's just like, it was kind of like everything kind of funneled into stuff. I even had uh, one of my most important classes that I took at USC was this directing mise en scène class with a professor's name was Barnett Kellman. And it really taught me that while I was going through school, I wasn't really directing. I was just being a super cinematographer, you know? And that class really taught me how do you talk to actors? How do you know what I mean? How do you actually direct? You know, when you slap all those things out of your hands of like a camera and cool effects and all that stuff. It's just like, can you actually make two people sitting across from each other having a conversation interesting to watch? The dynamics of that. And so that really opened my eyes. And before I made this movie, right before I was like, a month or two before I flew out to North Carolina to shoot it, he had a very long, like 2 hour conversation with me about, it's like, because I was worried about, I was like, how do I approach this? And, all these other things, different techniques to get performances out of audiences, because, one of the things is just like, look, in a lot of horror movies, there's people walking down hallways scared, right? Like, and it's, and that's something that I had questions about, where I was just like, all right, well, like, what is that? I mean, you don't just tell an actor be scared, right? Because that, it's like it might not produce great results. And so, I was talking to him about stuff like that, and how do you cast a monster? What are you looking for and stuff like that? And he really just opened up a lot of in front of me, like, and really mentored me and told me a lot of stuff that I did use that worked really well. So yeah, I would say like those things really spun into, my professional career or whatever, especially when not to get boring, but like when you're getting into lawyer deals and stuff like that, it's like it's a side that film school kind of skips, right? Like, I mean, a lot of film schools don't talk about that part of the process of when a deal comes across your table and you have to start negotiating before anything. And so he was helping me and guiding me in that scenario as well. I mean, of course, you have your team, but when you have someone who's seasoned and been through the ringer, he can tell you things that was really, profoundly helpful during those moments. So, yeah, I'd say it helped out a lot.
Thank you for that. So
Mm,
you were talking about some of the short films that you made. You made Hollow Tags, Mill
yeah,
Street, and Run. That was right before you got your feature.
yeah.
Um, so what are some of the preconceptions that you had of like the way that movies are made that were completely shattered once you got into making movies yourself?
That's a good question. Let me think about that. That's like, so you're talking about like the differences between kind of just like making stuff with your friends and then getting into the game and making like Angry Black Girl or Rocksteady Row.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's weird. There's differences, but there's also not a lot of differences too, It's like, because on the one end, it's like sometimes I'm sure you guys have come across this where you're like, yeah, I want to make a short film, and then there's a bunch of people who are talking about it, but no one wants to actually do it, right? That happens in this industry a lot. It's like, it's just like when you hear stories of people walking around with scripts and stuff like that, that's exactly what's going on. People are reading them and they're talking about it, but it's not happening, right? Like, so there's that, But then at the same time, there's other things where, it's like when it comes to resources or whether your friends are going to be involved or not, and like the time and all that, like, or like scheduling conflicts and all that kind of stuff when everyone's working professionals, it's just like it doesn't always happen the way necessarily may want it to. And also the big thing that kind of blew my mind, the big learning lesson, was just like, even, sitting in the director's seat for the first time for a feature, a lot of times you may mistake it as like, or for me, I was just like, all right, you just get your vision down. That's what I thought, right? You get your vision down and like just try to make a good movie, like to your standards or whatever. But what I learned, because once I got to the premiere at South by Southwest, I realized like nobody in that room had seen. Everybody came out, like the cast came out, the producers came out, I mean, the crew came out, like everybody was up in there, and none of them had seen the movie in its entirety except for me. Like they had seen it in its entirety, kind of like, oh, I saw it without sound. Oh, I saw it with sound, but not with color. I saw it with color and special effects, but not with score. You know what I mean? It was like no one saw it in its entirety, like completed it except for me. And so, I was just like, okay. And then like after the movie stopped, I realized that like, or before it, I was like, oh, like you could be walking into a shit show, right? Like it's like, it's like, and I'm sure plenty of actors have, and crew members and all that. And as a director, you're also not only just like the vision that you're trying to portray, but you're also the first line of protection for the story and the creatives. You know, it's like because they can only do so much, but you're following it down the line. And I remember seeing, I mean, thank God, you know, Chad Coleman, who was there, he loved it, you know, but when he was showing such a huge response to it, I immediately thought, man, this could have went sideways. It's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And um, you know, it's just like you're trying to protect not to embarrass people. You know what I mean? It's bigger than what you're doing of just like a vision and all that. You know, it's just like there's also people that you're trying to protect as well, you know? What up, Walter?
What
I'm
up?
good.
So I want to follow up on what you said a minute ago because I felt kind of like you left us hanging, and these guys are way too polite to
Yeah.
come after you with those follow up questions.
Yeah.
But is it a secret what you were told about how to direct people, how to direct conversations and stuff? What was some of that advice that you got? Because I think my favorite scene in the film of many is the dinner sequence right before when they're all together and you really feel that sort of warmth and fellowship. I love too when they're on the lawn together, you know, and you know, disciplining the kid. There's so much natural family feeling in this. What was some of that advice that you got, the really good advice before you started shooting about how to handle actors? I'm gonna peace out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. Y'all don't be afraid. Whatever. Yeah. I think like, you know, some of the things to know is like there's 1,000 different ways you can say a line. You know, there's so many different ways you could say a line, and really trying to discover the electricity in a scene, you know, and really trying to zero in and, as I always said, find some kind of humanity. Like, you know, to me, with Vicaria and Aisha, you know, they are like spiritual sisters, well, now real sisters, you know, like because you know, sister-in-laws or whatever. So like um and how that bond came to be, you know, talking to both of them and kind of being like, how do you think that uh this bond came to be? You know, do you think it came through, you know, the death of your brother, or do you think you both were friends before that? You know what I mean? Like, what kind of relationship do you believe this is? And really, it's a matter of talking to your actors and exploring this together because you don't have to have all the answers. You know, because to me, when we're moving through life, you know, we don't have all the fucking answers. We don't know what the hell is going on. We're just like, you know, like right now, it's just, you know what I mean? You're just making split second decisions. You know, how often do you actually get to sit and think and make a decision? It's like when you're moving through the day, you just get up, brush your teeth, eat, you know, you're not like, you know, it's like you don't know what the hell is going on. So like, um, I don't think when talking to actors that we have to have all the answers, but I do think we need to be exploring and talking about it, you know, and setting things down and figuring it out. So those were kind of some of the conversations I was talking to both of them about. It's been like, you know, what happened before? You know, it's just like, what brought you to this moment? Why do you think you guys are sitting here? Do you think you're, you know, because it could have been another way where Vicaria does not like her. Like it, you know, it's just like if you felt like their relationship wasn't good before this, you know what I mean? Depending on how she was, or you know what I mean, or it could go the other way. So, and both of those are valid ways to kind of go about it, depending on what kind of thematics you're trying to, you know, showcase. So to me, I think talking with those actors and figuring that out is crucial. And as far as the, you know, the dinner table scene, I would say that like understanding, you know, because to me a thread line in this movie is, you know, family is something that is, you know, that is going through this movie. And I think that during that dinner table moment, whether you understand it or not, is a thematic moment you're waiting for. You know, it's just like because all the pieces are separated the entire time. And then during that moment, everybody is in the room together, even Chris. So like understanding that and then also pulling from uh you know your own life experiences. For instance, like, you know, the racket buster scenes, you know, I altered it a tiny bit, but like that was something that happened over my dinner table. You know, and we would sit there, you know, me and my friend called them the one timers though. And my dad would constantly be like, yeah, I like that. The one time was like, you know what I mean? And so, but I was like, I always listened to this rap song by E40, the Yay Area. And he called the police the Racket Busters. And I always loved that. And I was like, I'm gonna put that in a movie someday. And like, so, so I used Racket Busters instead of one timers. But I think that always like talking to your actors and being open to any kind of situation, because sometimes actors will reject some of your ideas, and that's okay. And the reason why I believe that's okay is because you don't want someone, it's like if someone doesn't like an idea, even after kind of a talk about, well, why, you know, and all these things, why would you want someone to go down a path that they're not going to be able to completely throw themselves into? You know, so it's like if you reject this idea, well, what do you feel is the right choice? You know, it's just like, because I feel like a confident choice will always read better on camera than you know what I mean, than a non-confident one, you know, unless it's the point of the performance, I guess. But you know, um those are just some of the things that that I was thinking about working with actors. And, there's a theory around that's like half of directing is casting. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Um, Especially like when it comes to casting a monster, I was very, I don't know if trepidatious is the right word, but I was like nervous about it because, it's like working with monsters is a different animal. And I was talking to my professor, and one of the gold things that he told me on that phone call was like, look, uh, just have them all come in and do something simple. And I was just like, sit down and drink a glass of water, right? And in my head, I was, the fuck are you talking about? Excuse my French, man. Like I was like, that sounds crazy. You know what I mean? Like, why would I? It's like I'm gonna hang up the phone if you tell me this. It's like I don't know. But then he was just like, nah, there's a difference between how you will sit down and have a glass of water and Smeagol. And I was just like, oh my God, like I was like, that is so true. It's true. You know what I mean? Or one of them guys from Planet of the Apes, right? Like there's going to be a difference between how they come down and do something simple, So like, and that just like that was something that just blew my mind and opened it up to how you do that, right? So that's what when I was doing auditions for that, I was like, that was something that I did, and the one thing that Adam did that, no one else did was like everyone else kind of woke up, like a lot of people woke up pissed off and stuff, which is fine, you know what I mean? But like he woke up with like a beauty for life, and it was really fascinating seeing him operate on that, So those are just a couple of Easter eggs. I hope that went in a little bit more detail for y'all.
I did. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, you talked about the reality of everybody running around with a script. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
But yours did for Rocksteady Row.
Yeah.
Um, how involved were you with the film after writing it? And did you visit set? What was the experience of writing your first feature film?
Yeah, I was weirdly very involved with that movie. um, it's like I wrote that script, and then, after I was going through a lot of rewrites, with them while we were getting to a place to go into production. And then on top of that, while we were in production, because it was like micro budget, I was also DIT on set. So it's like, and I used it to wield power because I was just like, I'm the writer, and if you guys don't say the lines, I'm gonna delete the take, So it's like, so I was doing stuff like that. But now I was involved, and then because me and Trevor are so close, you know, uh, we grew up in the same town, and we've known each other for, so many years by that time. It was just like he was taking me around like a confidant throughout everything. Obviously there were some rooms I wasn't in because, cast, it's like, it's just too much. But for the most part, like I was there, obviously when I was writing it, And I was there when he would send me casting videos. And then I was there all throughout on set with him, like every single day, obviously, because I'm DIT. But then when we got into post, he was editing. And then even I came in during the edit and was just like, because, when you're alone with something, you hit walls. So he was just like, I don't know what, look at this. And I was just like, I kind of came in there, like, he'll tell you if you ever talk to him. I kind of came in there, was just like, yo, I love my writing as much as the next man, but you need to cut this shit out, right? Like it's not working, right? It's like, so get it on the floor, it's like, so can't be precious with it. So like, yeah, I was around. It was very exciting, because when you get a call for something from somebody and they, to make a feature, like you jump at it, it's like, because it's what you're working for. They only really gave me like 3 weeks or something like that to write the script, but like whatever. But yeah, it was fun. And then obviously, slam dance and all that was a crazy experience. And yeah, it was great.
Kind of following up on that, how involved you were with Rock Steady Row.
Mhm.
Were you that involved because you knew that eventually you wanted to direct? Like, was that already in your mind while working on Rock Steady Row, that like that's what you were working towards?
Yeah. No, like it's always been in the back of my mind to want to direct. I was doing little short films that I was directing, and it was always kind of part of my game plan, but for me it wasn't necessarily to uh I guess learn how to direct. I wish I actually wish that was in my head while I was doing it, probably would have, I don't know, helped me with things. But my whole MO was just to support trying to get the best movie made, what I mean, in any way possible. And support Trevor, it's just like I felt like while I was there, my goal was just to get Trevor to the next stage. You know what I mean? It's just like, and set him up for the most success. You know what I mean? Or set the movie up for the most success that I have the power to be able to do. And to me at that time was just like, one, tell the best story that you can possible. You know what I mean? Given the restraints and the time, and make sure that these producers and these executives, like, that when they read the script, that it's undeniable that they want to make it. You know what I mean? Because that's going to be the only thing that's going to trigger them to finance and try to get to the next level. So like, to me it was just a matter of trying to get, set this up foundationally for the best like story to be told possible. I guess that's more honest than kind of walking around being like, I'm only here to learn about dirty books. But yeah, that was kind of where I was at with it.
Thank you. We have another audience question. This one's from Kessler, if you want to come up.
Yeah. So I was wondering, given sort of how the film is adapting Frankenstein,
Yeah.
Frankenstein doesn't really end great for Victor and his family. So why did you decide to sort of change it and have, I think it's implied that Vicariate revives everybody at the end. Why do you make that change?
Oh, I can't completely answer that because I do like to let audience members and people who watch this movie to come to their own conclusions on those kind of things. What I can say from like a artistic standpoint is that it felt emotionally correct. It's just like, now trust me, I did drafts where I tried to kill her. Like, like I did drafts that were very that were crazy. I did a bunch of different things, I don't think I didn't exhaust all these ways, but they didn't feel true. It didn't feel honest, and it didn't feel emotionally like the calibration of it didn't feel correct. You know, Even now when I think about this movie and it just being like, Jada being like, oh, my family's dead. And then she's just like, I can't bring them back. And she's like, they were just here. And then it cuts to black. It's just like, you know what I mean? It's just like, what kind of like, I just don't feel like that feels honest or correct emotionally. So when I finally landed here, you know, where it is now, that felt it felt right. You know, it felt right. And so that's why I landed on. I can't say there was like a calculated, you know, situation. It was more of this was an emotional thing for me more than anything. And that's kind of where that's where I landed with it. So I'm a little bit obscure about it, but like it's like I do treasure an audience's ability to take something for themselves on what it means. You know, it's just like because then it's yours. Because after I put it out there, you know, I it's not mine anymore. You know what I mean? And I remember in film school and even now when I'm watching something like just certain things that I interpret a certain way, you know, it's just like it's mine and it's special to me, you know. So I hope to try to always cherish that for an audience.
Thank you. I have another question for you. This is kind of going back to your school experience. What are some of the things that you tell yourself as a freshman in film school right now? Like if you could go back in time and it's freshman Bomani, barely starting first day of school, what would you tell them?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I was pretty aggressive when I was in when I was a freshman to try to kind of because I went to community college first, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna exhaust every option I have, like to try to, you know what I mean, make movies and get good grades, and then transfer, then do the same thing. But you know, it's like I guess I would tell myself to have a more like man, that's a tough one. I guess I would say that I would uh explore a lot of like I got it. Explore getting like a skill set, right? Like I guess that's what would be my thing because like I kind of stumbled on one. I stumbled on one fairly quickly, which was great, you know, because for me, you know, it took me a while. You know, it's just like I'm 35 right now. So like, you know, obviously I graduated when I was like 20, 21. And my first feature just happened what you know what I mean like a year ago or whatever 6 months ago and so it took me you know the better part of like you know 10 years to kind of get to where I'm at so you know there are some what's it called prodigies who just come out swinging you know and just like get the deal and just kind of make it out. I wasn't one of those people. I needed to grind, learn, and practice my craft more. So in order to do that, you have to survive. You know, it's just like if I would have tapped out of the game 2 years later, I was just like, then I wouldn't be where I am right now. And the only way I was able to survive and grind was I picked up a skill set of assistant editing. You know, that's how I made money in order to keep writing and figuring out the system of how I can assistant edit while also continuing to write and make short films every year that I can, you know, and save my money and do that. And that took a lot of discipline. But one thing I didn't get out of USC because I wasn't searching for it was just like, all right, so what am I going to utilize to make money to be able to survive so I can continue to write? You know, because I was very short-sighted. You know, I was just like, of course, you know, it's just like we all are like, well, at least everyone in my class was just like, yeah, we're gonna get a deal and drop out of film school because that's what needs to happen, right? Like so, but my reality was that that's not what was going to happen, and it's not what happened. What happened was is I graduated and I was fucking broke, right? Like, okay. And I moved home with my mom for, you know, a year before I was able to moved to LA. And then I was in LA for, you know, I don't know how long this was, like 4 years, right? Still, I was still like writing, but like it was only through me making my own short film. And like because I didn't have money to pay people, I had to figure out how to assistant edit it myself. Of like, okay, how do you color it? How do you get it to coloring? How do you get it to sound? You know what I mean? Like all those little small like nuts and bolt things. And because I did that, when I went into some random, I didn't even know assistant editing was a job. That's how crazy it was, right? Like, you know, I was like, I went to SC, did all these things. I didn't know assistant editing was even a job. All I knew was just like, yeah, you shoot stuff, you know, you direct stuff. I didn't know there was these other nooks and cranny jobs. And so by the time I did this, you know, I did this short film for myself. And I learned how to get a project from point A to point B that's not creative at all. You know what I mean? Like, some might be creative, but it's like, it has nothing to do with just, writing and directing. And I went into a random interview that said assistant editor. I didn't know what the hell it was. I was just looking for some money. Like, that's what I was doing. And ended up being this documentary. And they were like, can you do these things? And I was just like, yeah, I did that. Like, I did that with my short film, right? Like, that's easy. They're like, you're hired, right? And I was like, oh, okay. And then that's when I figured out, I was just like, oh, okay, like, I can do this to make money so I don't die. And so like I was like, and so I started doing assistant editing, and I figured out this system where I was like, no, it's like, this is a gig economy in Hollywood, right? Shows end, movies end, and then you have to find the next one. And so, like, one thing that I loved about working in post-production was that whether it's a TV show or a film, it's going to end. And, depending on who you are or whatever, there's going to be time in between those jobs. So what I would do is I would spend my time writing in the mornings and at night, chipping away a little bit at a time, doing 1 page here, 2 page here, until I had a short film. By the time I was done, it's like, and then I would be assistant editing during the day. And then when the job ended, in between those, jobs, when it was a month or whatever, I would take the money I saved and I would go shoot a short film. And then after I was done shooting the short film for like a weekend or two, then I'd go back to work. And then that's why it'll be in post, and I would edit in the morning and at night, or one of my friends would be editing, and that's how I would accomplish that. So like, to me in film school, I wish I like had a more holistic understanding of cinema and the backbone behind it, because like, I was fortunate enough to luck up and discover this job. You know what I mean? Um, Instead of being like, I guess, arrogant or, blinded by being like, oh, I'm gonna direct. So my friend was like kicking me these like music videos and stuff like that. But like, if I would have understood that process and that machine a little bit better, I would have been better able to kind of manage my time to work towards the things that I want to do.
We got 15 minutes left, so we're gonna ask a couple more questions. I think the next thing is an audience question.
It's gonna be Jamie.
James?
Hi.
What up?
When working with child actors versus adult actors, especially like Jada in this movie, how do you find your way into these conversations with a child actor in these situations of intense gore and intense like family drama? What does it look like in talking with these kids about this and making sure that you're giving them a perspective into it and making sure that they're not getting traumatized by it?
All right, good. I mean, really, it's a conversation with not just the actor. Obviously, you're going to be talking to their parents too, and having them, uh, say where their child is, with stuff. For her, for Amani, her mom was very, clear, just being like, she knows this is fake, and like, you know what I mean. She was very upfront about that, and like, also the people around said understand, be like, this is just syrup, like, you know what I mean, like, and things of that nature, in order to kind of to let them know it's okay, that they're just acting or whatever, right? So you don't actually hurt them, right? But on the other side of it, it's also building I mean, obviously, like a relationship. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like you're working with humans, you're collaborating with humans. And I think understanding how different people work, you know, with all these actors in this movie, they all operate differently. There's certain things I can do with certain actors that I can't do with others, because that's not how they communicate. I'm sure you all have friends who you communicate with differently, right? You know what I mean? It's just like, I have a friend where I can walk up to him and say, fuck you. You know what I mean? He knows that means I love you, right? Like, he knows that, right? But there's other friends where I can't do that with. I don't have that kind of relationship. And to me, it's the same type with like collaboration. Some actors like work differently on how performances work, and zeroing in on who they are, I think is crucial, and understanding people as humans and how they communicate. Because that was another thing my professor told me. when he was mentoring me was that, like, you know, there's a lot of images of what directing is when they're holding up their little hands like this and all that other stuff. And like, he was just like, you know, that's bullshit. And he said the real like image of directing is actually should be just like putting your hands behind your back and leaning in and listening. Because what you're going to get is you're going to understand what people need in order to put them in the most strongest or the most powerful position to perform, you know? And so it's like whether that's your DP or your production designer or your actors, you know, by listening to them and truly listening, you know, not just the words they're saying, because that's one thing, you're listening to that, but also to who they are. You know, it's just like, and how you can put yourself in a position to bring the best out of them of what they need. You're only going to get there by listening to them. So for me, listening to this child and understanding what she needed was important. And I'll tell you what she needed. It was actually kind of funny because my professor told me this in the class and it came back and I was like, oh my God, yeah, I'm using it. And when I was in directing, it was called Director Mise en Scène. And he said, it's just as important to understand when to shut the fuck up and when to say something to your actors, right? And so on set, I literally ran into that with her. It was like, you just don't like, I don't say you don't give her direction, but you kind of don't give her direction. You just say, okay, let's do it again. And then she improves. Like, that's just how she was. I didn't have to tell her anything. It was just kind of like, okay, this is how she operates. You're just going to confuse her by telling her things. She's in the scene, she's in the moment, and she's going to be thinking about it after. And she's going to, you know what I mean, autocorrect and try different things already. Right. So by stepping back and letting go, you know, and not overwhelming her with things actually made her even stronger on a performance level. You know what I mean? So just I think that was something that really worked for me while I was doing it.
Thank you so much. That was an amazing answer.
Okay.
You had said in a previous interview that Hollywood is a town that likes to say no a lot.
Yeah.
Filmmakers often have to adjust their vision and voice to get that yes some of the time. Do you think there are some things young filmmakers should not budge on and things that we should push the envelope on besides that?
Things that filmmakers should not budge on, like in like I mean, of course, I think, you know, there are radical ideas out there for what you want to say and what you want to do, you know. I would say that instead of looking at it as in like, oh, they're, you know, trying to stop you or whatever, you know, I would look at it as like, how do I get this across? You know what I mean? It's like some people like to get their themes and their messages across through genre. You know what I mean? Some people like it to just be upfront. You know, it's like there's 1,000 different ways to skin a cat. And yes, there's a bunch of people saying, you know, no in Hollywood, but there's also a bunch of people saying yes. Those people say yes to projects. They say yes to stories, you know, and it's up to you to try to figure out, again, working with people and listening. You know what I mean? Who are you taking this to? Now, granted, like you might not have all the options. I didn't have all the options. You know, nobody was going to talk to me with this script because I, you know, I'm still not, you know, what I mean, big, but like I wasn't anybody even then, you know? So it's like, but what I found, like I found a company that was interested in making the feature jump, you know, and they were interested in the story that I was telling. So it was like when I pitched to them and all that, they were listening. So there were people that I could talk to, you know, and understanding that. It's just like I can't say I could walk into Paramount or something like that with that script back then, like because you know, it's like why should they talk to me, right? You know what I mean? It's just like they're not may not be looking for that. But the company that I found, Crypt TV, they were a monster company. And you see how like those things, you know, we can, you know, it's like we can do business, we can do this, we could tell a story together. So that would be my complicated answer for what you said. It's like I don't know if that answers it, but stay true to yourself. Like that's what I can say, you know, and finding if you're find yourself running into a wall, I would say, you know, don't be afraid because like this, everyone's going to be saying no to, you know, it's just you'd have to get used to that. I'm still getting used to it. But finding ways to deliver your message, you know, what I mean, finding ways to to get that out different ways, you know what I mean, is I think is usually the answer. Because just because someone doesn't want it doesn't mean the next person doesn't, or how you're talking to presenting it, you know, that would be how I would say it, you know, and that's across the board.
So,
What
man,
a Walter.
I thought you were a prodigy. I've been telling these guys that you're 25 years old. You're 35 years old. So that actually makes me like you even more, because to hear about your struggle, that's actually more meaningful than if you got shot out of a cannon somehow. But I want to comment really quick about the ending of the film, and I know that you want to go into details about it. But what I take away from it is that I'm so used to watching films starring minorities, Asian people, Black people, Hispanic folks, that show our pain and our suffering as a community, and that's almost pornographic, I think, for the majority viewer. So there's something really uplifting and hopeful about your film, about family and the importance of community. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit just about broadly the importance of portraying community and family, especially from a minority context in your work.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that a lot of times, a lot of just like communities or non-represented communities were kind of cast aside and were dehumanized and utilized to catapult, you know, some other, you know, story, whatever it might be. And I really think, again, I think I said it before, with just like trying to zero in on the humanity of us and the importance of, you know, community. You know, I think it's something that everyone can, you know, attest to. You know, obviously there's differences of how different communities move, but the idea of family and community is something that I think is relevant across the board for people to understand. And so it was very important to me to show all the different berets of our community, and like the shades, you know, especially, you know, when I during that dinner table scene, I was actually very scared to direct that scene, especially particularly because the way the two sister-in-laws kind of go at each other's neck in that scene, right? And I actually almost like I almost stopped them, right? Like, because before we did it, I was just like, "Are we sure we should do this?" Because you know, and Aisha, she was like, not Aisha, Riley, who plays Aisha, she was just like, no, this, you know, it's like this is what, you know, she kind of went in. I was just like, all right. And then after that, I talked to Chad, and he was kind of just like, yeah, man, you know, families have to have the range to be able to do that. And then it made me like remember all these times at my dinner table where my sisters would be talking, or me and my sister would be arguing, or whatever. But at the end of the day, it was all of, you know, and showcasing that, you know, that parameter of being able to go from, you know, arguing, having a difference of opinion, but also be able to sit back down and eat with each other and understand that we still love each other, was crucial. So, and I think people seeing us as a community and seeing the range, you know, it's like, because, you know, as you know, the trope, the angry Black woman or the angry Black man, you know what I mean? It's just like, we can be angry, you know, that's okay. You know, it's like, it's just an emotion, and we can also show love and happiness as well. So to me, it was important to kind of get all those things involved in this. I hope that answers your question, Walter.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna try to squeeze in one more audience question. This one's from Ollie.
Hello.
Hello.
So I was just wondering, with this being your directorial debut, what you're going to take with you from what you did and what you're going to leave behind when directing your next feature, in terms of like, this worked really well, I'm gonna do this over and over again on all my films, and this was like a disaster, I'm never doing it again, even that in the past. Yeah, so I guess just like the pros and cons that you've learned from your first film.
Yeah, okay. Okay. I think, like, you know, I definitely love, you know, my team, the people who were a part of this, who were like, you know, busting their ass to get this done. You know, I would say I definitely would want to uh have more conversations with them, you know, leading up to it. You know, it's like, and explore the time spent with them, you know what I mean, especially with actors as well involved, you know, because I think the more that we can collaborate and talk and get on the same page with things, it's just like it's only going to make the movie stronger. And I think, you know, that kind of stuff, like and rehearsing, I rehearsed with my actors and it did wonders, you know, and I only had like a week, you know, to rehearse, and that did wonders for the movie. So you know, a lot of those stuff I'm going to keep, you know, 100%, you know. As far as what I would abandon, I don't, you know, obviously it's always a learning process, but it's hard for me to say whether I you know, it's like what I don't want involved, you know, it's like, because I had such great people around me during this time, even when it got tough, you know, so it's like, I guess I would abandon my, I alluded to it earlier, but I would abandon my short-sighted focus of just like, you know, trying to get, you know, my vision across, like, and only focused on making a great movie. And I would focus, that would be a part of it, but I would also focus on understanding that, as I said before, like as being a first line of protection for the artists involved, to not embarrass anyone else involved. You know, I think that's crucial. You know what I mean? And listening, because like, you know, like I said, if that world premiere, if they walked in and it was a, you know, a shit show, like, you know, it's like, yeah, it's bad for me, but like actors have to live with their face on that for like, you know what I mean, forever. And that's even more horrible. It's one thing for me to fall, you know what I mean, but for people to fall with me, that's like, you know what I mean? It's just like, I can't have that. So I think I would maintain, you know, I mean, that understanding, you know, it's just like an abandon the shallow look of making a film of just kind of like, this is how it needs to be done and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? It's just like, and trying to make a good, I mean, obviously always trying to make a good film, but also understanding that, you know, this is a process where, you know, I mean, it's like you're all collaborating and you're protecting these people. You know what I mean? Like that's part of your job. You're protecting them creatively.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We're gonna wrap up our questions because we're almost out of time. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for coming to talk to us.
No problem.
Yeah, would you mind sticking around for a photo? Like we're all gonna walk over here in front of the screen. Picture of you. Is that cool?
Yeah, no, that's right.
All right, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Literally standing.
Yeah, move over there.
All right, you guys. Mary Shelley on three. 1, 2, 3.
Mary Shelley.
All right. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Hey, Bomani, thank you so much. So good to see you, man.
Good to see you too. Thank you for
Yeah.
thinking of me, man.
Of course, I'll be in touch with you, okay?
All right, sounds
All right.
good.
Take
All
care of
right.
yourself.
Y'all take care.
Bye. Thank you.